Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for the 80-hour developer. In our last lesson, we talked about the generalized software development workflow, and we talked about gathering requirements to understand just what we're building in the first place, breaking those down into individual checklist items that we're calling tickets, and then from there, we talked about creating a branch for each ticket, writing our code in that branch, and merging it back. So I've probably lost a lot of you if you're new developers, and that's okay. When we talk about branching and Git and all of that, it can be super confusing, and I'm hoping to demystify as much of that as I can. The best way to do it is just to get started with our project. So we're going to do a fresh install of a Laravel project, and what I'm going to do though is change, so this is what we get if we copy from the page. I'm going to change this to tickets because I want to create a directory called tickets, and my project is going to be called tickets. So while this installs, let's come back here and we're going to take a look at our ticketing app. So the very first thing that we're doing is installing Laravel, and then we're going to set up some auth, all the rest of this. I'm going to create a new ticket here for explain Git with dev test controller. Okay. So I'm going to pause this while my Laravel project installs, and once it's in, we will come back and get started. Okay, so that actually happened pretty quickly. It was about a minute to a minute and a half that we were paused. One of the things that I want you to notice is that as of this recording, we're using Laravel 5.6. The tutorial that you did originally was Laravel 5.2, and the latest version that Jeff had up on Laracast was 5.4. So we're a couple of versions ahead, which means there might be some small changes between how things worked in the initial tutorial, but those will all be really easy to identify. And if you do something that should have worked in 5.2 that doesn't work in 5.6, you should be able to identify that pretty quickly. You can do a Google search or just ask in the comment section here. Okay, but what we have now is a new directory called tickets, so we can enter into that. And we see that we've got our Laravel project in here. We see that it's installed everything into our vendor directory, and we are ready to go. So what I'm going to do is open this up in PHP Storm, and we can start taking a look at it from there. Okay, so we're in PHP Storm. We have our .env file, and the application has already helpfully given us a nice app key, so we don't have to worry about doing any setup there. What I'm going to do though is tell it that the URL is tickets.test. And in this .env file, we're also going to change this to ticketing app. World's best ticketing app. Yeah, that's fine. Now, if you'll remember way back, probably in the second or third video, when we did our machine setup, I had you guys install Laravel Valet. So hopefully that's on your system. You can check it very quickly by typing in Valet help, and hopefully something will pop up. If you just type up Valet, you'll get a list of commands. Okay, so if you haven't done this already, make sure that you type in Valet Park in your code directory. And what this will do is ensure that every directory that you have in the code directory will open up as a project in your browser when you put .test after it. So let's test that out. We're going to come here, tickets.test. And when I do this, we're immediately going to see that I get the Laravel default homepage. Okay, this is what we get because in my tickets project, when we go to our web file, we get taken to the welcome page. And this welcome page is this. So we're going to be working off of this, but we can see here that because of Valet, I'm able to immediately see in the browser the Laravel default project, which is pretty wonderful. So I said that the generalized workflow, the first thing we want to do is to create a branch and to use Git. So Git is called a version control system. And the best way to think about it is if you've ever been working on a Microsoft Word document and you wanted to make some changes, but you weren't sure if you wanted to keep those. So what you might have done was to create one copy of it that you're working on right now, and then create a new copy and call it work in progress. Or maybe you put a timestamp in front of it. And if you're anything like me, you might have created 5 or 6 different versions of the same document because you weren't sure which one you ultimately ended up wanting to keep. So Git works similarly, and I'll show an example of this. First thing we're going to do is type in git init, and that tells it to initialize a Git project. So from here, we're going to do this. We're going to say git add a, which adds all files, git commit with a message, git commit -m means git commit with the message, no issue, first commit. Whoops. Okay, now this is now committed. This is saved. So this is like we've saved our entire directory in one place, and any changes are going to be captured by this. So now if I come in here and I add something new to the route, so let's say, and this is something I always like to do, dev test controller, and which means we need a dev test controller. So PHP artisan make controller dev test controller. So nothing here should be unfamiliar, right? I've added something to my web file. I've made a new controller. I'm going to go into this controller, create an index method. I'm just going to return hello master branch. So one of the things that's really interesting is if I do a git status now, it's going to tell me that these files have changed. And we know that's true. These files have changed since I committed it. So think of a commit as like you're saving the state of your application at that point. So let's do this. Let's commit these. Let's add these again. And have I created a branch for this? I haven't. We'll say no issue core master branch. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is it's called branching, and we're going to branch off git checkout to a new branch. We're going to call that develop. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say hello develop branch. And we see that this tells us we've got a change only in this file. We know that's true. Okay, so now we have a develop branch that we've made changes in, and we have a master branch. So watch what happens when I check out to master. When I come in here, I see this changes. The text in here changed back to master branch. And again, the text changes to develop branch. And if I had 1,000 files that had all changed, this would be the same. All 1,000 files would change between the branches. So this allows us to work on different areas of the application at the same time, and it allows us to ensure that we're not actually overwriting changes that somebody else is working on or that we're not sure we want to overwrite. A branch is our way of saying, hey, I'm going to make some changes. I don't know if I'm going to put them in my actual code, but I want to see what everything looks like. And I want to see how it works in that branch. Okay, so the workflow we're going to use throughout this entire project is for each ticket, we're going to create a separate branch. So Laravel has been installed. Okay, and so now I'm working on TI 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, and what I'm going to do is add in this hello TI 11 branch. And let's add some new files. This is actually a really good point for me to bring up the concept of shortcuts. So I don't like typing out PHP Artisan. It's boring and I use the command so often. So what I've done is set up some ZSH shortcuts. So that lives in this file. Vi ZSHRC. So in here, this is all, in all honesty, this is quite foreign to me, but there's a section down here with aliases. And that makes sense to me. What we're saying is, when I type AF, so alias, AF equals PHP Artisan migrate fresh. So you'll see that I've got one here, alias A. Whenever I type A, treat that as if I've typed in PHP Artisan. Okay? So you can create any aliases you want. These are some of my favorites. So for now, go into your ZSHRC file, and we'll do this together. Vi, and this should be somewhat familiar to you from earlier lessons, squiggly /.ZSHRC. Okay? I'm going to press Shift and down until I find the points that have aliases. And if there's nothing there, then just at the very bottom you can create your own aliases. These hashtag symbols here just mean comment, so none of these are being used. So typically your ZSHRC file will have these example aliases that you might want to use. I've commented them out, I've left them commented out. So if you don't have alias A equals PHP Artisan, type that in. Escape : WQ exclamation point to save your changes. And then what you're going to find is if you just added a new alias, it's not going to work for you. You need to open up a new window, a new shell. Now your alias will work. So now if you type in A, oops. Of course, it's not working there. I don't have Artisan there. But in my tickets file where I have a Laravel project and I type A, I now have the same as typing PHP Artisan. Okay, so we're going to say A, make controller TI temporary controller. So now when I come in here, if I look at my app HTTP controller, we're going to see this TI temporary controller. In fact, I'm going to we'll call it ticket temporary controller. Okay. So, ticket temporary controller. So let's go in here. And we'll create some methods. We'll create an index method and we'll just return from here. Okay, and I'm going to come back to my web and let's create a route for this. We'll call it ticket temp. Okay, so when we hit this route, we expect to see ticket temp controller, yay. Everything's working the way we expect. Great. So let's do a git status. That's going to tell us everything that's changed. And here we see that our web file has changed, our dev test controller changed, and we added in this new file of ticket temporary controller. So let's add those. We're going to commit it with the message of the ticket name, TI11, added temporary ticket controller. So what happens if I go back to my develop branch? Okay, we know that in our branch 11, branch TI11, we've got this ticket temporary controller. We've got this web file that has this route in it. What happens if we go back to our develop branch? Well, let's see. It's disappeared. And this line has disappeared that we had. And in fact, if we go to our dev test controller, it says, hello, develop branch. If we try to visit this route now, it tells us there's a page not found. Okay, so this is why branching and using Git and version control is so wonderful. If I decide that I don't actually want that ticket temporary controller, I can just go back to the branch from before the time that I made it. If I want it back, and now I try to visit it, it's there again because I'm in this branch. If I really do like this, I can check it or I can merge it into my develop branch, and that will pull all those files and any changed files in. Okay, so this is a very rudimentary introduction to Git and to a few of the Git commands that we use. So let's get away from the theory and let's actually get this into practice. I'm going to come back to our development environment. We're not going to keep that ticket temp controller. We don't need it. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to say that TI11, which was in progress, is done. So we've explained Git at least a little bit, and now we're going to go through our workflow. So the next thing I've said is we need to set up auth. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to check out -B, which means check out a new branch, TI2. And if you'll remember from previous Laravel videos, we can set up auth as easily as saying make auth. All right, wonderful. So let's see what that did for us. That gave us a home controller. It gave us auth routes. And in our home controller, we have this index, and that ties us to a home view. So if we go, in fact, in here and do a git status, we can see here's all the things that have changed. We got a new auth directory, we got a new layouts directory, we got a home.blade.php. And so when we come in here into our resources, views, we can see this new home blade.php. Wonderful. It's using this layouts app file, and you'll remember all that good stuff about the layout file earlier. Okay, this is all looking really good. So now when we come back to our tickets app, we see there's a login and register. I can go to login, it takes me to a login page. And if I try to get in here, nothing happens. In fact, I get an error because I don't have my database set up. So what we know is that we can't log in, we don't have anything in play. In our next video, we're going to continue along with this. We're going to get our authorization set up and get the home page of our application set up. So this has been our introduction to Git. It's been our introduction to the ticketing workflow, and we're finishing off with an error. So join me next time when we resolve this error and get everything working the way that we expect. Thanks so much, everyone.